They say there are two difficult things to climb in the world. One is Mount Everest, one is auditing syllabus.
Definitely, I'm sure the one who
Cut off
said
all that extra fat which is not necessary, so that
ICA
for
is
the one.
totally looking for the quality of content rather than the beautification,
So
right?
was auditing your favorite subject?
Well, I think it's a no-brainer to answer this question. It is
So even I tell that ABC analysis is not for selective study, it is for prioritizing our revision. Hello warriors, hope you're all doing amazing. At the very outset, I have three questions to ask all of you. First, which is your favorite subject? It may be accounts, costing, tax for few, law for few. Next question, which is the most scoring subject for CA Inter? Again, it may be accounts, costing, taxation, FM, law for few. Now comes the third and the important question. Which one do you think is the most difficult subject? For 90% of people who are preparing for CA Inter, it is undoubtedly auditing and EIS-SM. I've heard so many students tell these subjects are dry, these subjects are difficult, these subjects are boring. So we've made an attempt to make these subjects interesting. So welcome to this special series, From Boring to Scoring. Here we are going to give you few insights, strategies, tips and tricks so that you can increase your marks in auditing and EIS-SM for CA Inter. And today we have with us our guest, CA Divesh Harpalani. So Divesh Harpalani has secured All India rank 6 in CA Inter May 2018. He has also secured All India rank 13 in CA Final May 2021. He has taken part in various national and international conferences. In fact, we were together in Pune International Conference and Sri Lanka International Conference and have spent almost a week together enjoying party. So he's taken part in various elocutions, debates, quiz, youth parliaments. The list is very long and a very special achievement. He has secured 87 marks in CA Inter Auditing. Not 40, not 60, not even 70, 87 marks in CA Inter Auditing. So let's hear from Divesh, his journey, his preparation for CA Inter Auditing. So firstly, welcome Divesh to our show.
Thanks, Tabish. I hope you are doing good, and kudos to you for guiding so many students on the right path. I hope, and I'm sure that all of them will certainly benefit out of this particular video as well as all other videos on your channel.
Thank you so much, Tabish. So the first question, which all of them would ask you, you've scored 87 in auditing. So was auditing your favorite subject?
Well, I think it's a no-brainer to answer this question. It is definitely, in fact, auditing would be the second last choice as a favorite subject. I mean, the last obviously being EIS-SM, but then it is definitely not my favorite subject, or in fact, I would say certainly in the list of the most difficult subjects, as you rightly mentioned. For me as well, auditing came on the second position, obviously the first being EIS-SM.
Okay, so you've told that it was a difficult paper for you as well, the way it is for every CA student. So what is it that you have done to make this subject scoring? So what was your preparation strategies? How did you go through with the preparation, the materials you've used, how many times you've revised? So please guide us through all those things you've done to prepare for your auditing.
Yeah, we'll certainly go into the details of each and everything, but I'll give you a broad directional thing, the approach that I had adopted. So the first thing, let me be very clear on this. Even one day before the auditing exam, or in fact, even 1 hour before the auditing exam, I was very concerned about probably not being able to score that 40 marks in the paper of auditing. So that is actually true. Only when I saw the 87 marks was I sure that I have cleared audit. I did not have any surety until the moment before I saw my result. So that's actually a truth. Every CA student, whether it is inter or CA final, certainly is scared of the subject of auditing, irrespective of whether he is a ranker or not. Every single CA student has that fear, and same was the case with me as well.
Yeah, they say
Even
there are they say there are two difficult things to climb in the world. One is Mount Everest, one is auditing syllabus.
Definitely, I'm sure the one who said it has certainly been a CA student, and definitely true. And I'm sure everyone could agree and relate with it. So, and in fact, that's actually the point that there's no one person who can definitely say with confidence that he will clear in the paper of auditing unless he's, let's just say, very optimistic. So that's actually a very normal fear to have, and even I had it. The point over here is that to conquer subjects like auditing and EIS, the very important fact is to accept that it is very important to study these subjects to actually clear CA Inter, and to actually study audit to clear CA final as well. Unless and until you have that acceptance in yourself, if you always keep thinking that it's a difficult subject, which it is as a matter of fact, but the fact is, if it is difficult, it's difficult for everyone. And I know that doesn't make it easy, but that certainly makes it possible for you to prepare and at least clear, because there have been people who've been doing it. So it was mainly, I would say, this approach, or at least this thought process that I had in my mind, ki karna to hai. I mean, you have to do it. So that's one positive mindset that you have while preparing these subjects, instead of cribbing about them being difficult, which they are. And I'm sure, I mean, you can crib, you have all the right to, even I used to. The point is, not just cribbing, probably having that positive mindset at least while studying the subjects of audit and EIS, because cribbing wouldn't make anything easy, in fact might make it difficult. So what the main thing I would like to probably put out over here is having that positive mindset towards subjects like auditing and EIS, and not to maybe keep targets as high as maybe 60 or 70 or 80, but at least making sure that we end up scoring good marks, whether it is say 50 or 60, depending from person to person. But we need to have that positive mindset. Is very, very important.
Yes. So positive mindset towards these subjects are important. It's difficult for everyone, cannot help. So the only thing we can do is, how do we tackle? How do we try making the difficult possible for us? So that's what we can do as students. So what was your preparation strategy, Divesh, for auditing, for CA?
Correct. So rightly said. In fact, once you accept that in the mind that you have to do it any which ways, that is when you've actually conquered. Probably you've reached halfway the mountain of audit. Now the next half is also very important, because you have to reach the peak as well. That is the clearing the exams as well. So I would say, I mean, different things over here. Auditing was one subject in which I did one more revision as compared to the other subjects. So for example, I knew that I'm weaker in audit as compared to the other subjects. So I went ahead and did one more revision in audit as compared to the others, right? So for example, there was another thing that I did. What I as a student, what I would do is, say for example, if I've taken advanced accounts, I would prefer to study it at a stretch of 1 week and close it from start to end. But something like this in the paper of audit is not possible, because 7 days studying auditing at a stretch, or whether it is EIS, SM, is not possible at all. So something that I did back in inter as well as in my final as well was breaking it into parts. At least in the first reading, breaking it into parts was something that really helped me. Now, when I say parts, it could be both ways. So if someone who is comfortable with studying 2 subjects a day, one theory and one practical, I will certainly suggest for that him or her to go for 2 subjects a day. But there are few people like me who cannot probably study audit. Let's just say, who cannot probably study 2 subjects on one day, who want to study just one day in the one subject in the entire day. So for someone like me, what should be done is, probably I used to study audit in parts. So if it's 8 days that I want to give to audit in total, I would break it into 4 parts of 2 days, or let's just say probably 3 parts, being let's just say 3, 3, and 2, something like that, so that you don't have to face the boredom of doing 8 days at a stretch, because ultimately it will be ineffective and inefficient, and you'll be so frustrated, annoyed at the end of the day. That is not the thing that you should be doing. And trust me, when you break it into parts, you will find it easier. I'm not saying you'll find it easy, but it will be certainly be easier than doing it all at one stretch. So that is something that I had done back in my inter. Now, one problem that with doing it in parts is actually that you would not feel very confident about the subject, but because you've not done it at a stretch, right? But that problem can be taken care of in the second reading. So the second reading, if you're allocating, for example, say 3 or 4 days, that is when you can study audit in one stretch, right? That is something that I had done during my time. Next is, I would say, one of my seniors, who's my cousin as well, see, he had suggested me back then in inter as well as in final, whatever. Now, this is something very controversial that I'm going to say, and everyone must be having their own opinions. People say that whatever you've say studied the previous day, revise the next day, which is actually something that you should be doing, at least so far as the lectures time is concerned. But while you do the self study during your last 2-3 months, my senior suggested me not to revise audit that you had read the previous day again today. Because the problem with auditing as a subject, which I also faced, and I'm sure you will be at peace after listening to this, you will suggest that particular answer within 5 minutes of reading it. And that is something that happens with everyone. I'm sure even Tabish Bhai would have faced this. Now, what happens if you go on and revise the same answer the next day, you will be very scared because you're not able to recollect that particular answer. What will happen ultimately is you will spend the entire day today revising the content that you had read yesterday and ultimately still not being confident enough that you remember it. That is actually a truth. So my senior had suggested me that so far as auditing and EIS is concerned, do not go and revise what you had read yesterday. Once you've done that reading for a particular chapter yesterday, now you take it up directly in the next reading, that is your second revision or whenever, not again today. That is something, or even if you want to revise that very night, don't take it till tomorrow. Otherwise, you will feel afraid that you've probably, you keep forgetting it. And the next reading, obviously, you may or may not be recollecting things. But trust me, once you start reading it again, you will be at the back of the mind feeling, okay, I am able to recall a few things, right? And trust me, you might still not be able to recall a few things during those 1.5 days before exam. But that is when the last 1.5 days before exam comes to your rescue. Because when you study things in that 1.5 day, only when will you be able to write it during the 3 hours of your exam. So that 1.5 day is very important. And that takes me to my next point, which is it is very difficult to complete the entire course of auditing in the last 1.5 days, right? And we all know this is a matter of fact. Now, what I did to tackle this problem is, now, for example, if there are 100 pages in a book of audit, say, for example, in the first reading, if I'm able to read all 100 by taking maybe 10 days instead of 7 that I would have planned. But if in the last 1.5 days, I can read just 50, even if I had read the other 50, probably 3 months before, it will not be of any use to me. And I was very mindful of this fact since day one. So my target since day one was, and this is a suggestion that I would like to give to you all as well, during your lectures, whatever is taught, go through it once at your end. So from 100 pages that you read, for the chapter-wise test that you give, you will probably, let's just say, mark the important content. Now, when I say important content, I am not saying important answers, but within an answer, there's certainly few things that are more important than the rest. So if there are 100 pages, you are not actually supposed to read the entire 100 pages the day before exam. Now, I am not saying you skip 20-30 pages. I am saying you skipped 20-30% of each page, say, for example, which is relatively not as important as the remaining. So if you're asked one question, say the qualification of auditor, say, for example, you know that there's probably only one part that is important and the rest is probably just an explanation, giving an illustration. So the module, that is the study material, has flowcharts given at a lot many pages. So what I did was I marked the flowchart, and whatever corresponding theory was repeated in terms of the paras following that flowchart, I cancelled that theory so that I would not have to read the entire content for the second time. That's what I did. So when you study for the chapter-wise test during your lectures, you cut down the 100 pages to, for example, 80 pages. Right? I mean, content proportionate to 80 pages. Now, once you read it during your last 3 months, you cut down those 80 pages to, for example, say 65 pages. Then in the next reading, you cut down those 65 pages to 50 pages. And this way, in the last 1.5 days, you have just 50 pages to read, which is in fact 100 pages, but cut down into 50 pages, because from each page, you'll have to read just half of what the entire content is without compromising on the course as well. So I'm not saying you cover just 50% of the course, cover 100% of the course, but only those 50% of the things that are relevant for you.
Yes, so that's a very important thing to take. So just to summarize all the things, firstly, take audit in parts. We cannot take it totally. And so we need to give 3-4 revisions. So we need to accept that audit is difficult. So one extra revision is always required. So one more thing which Divesh Bhai has rightly told is that try summarizing and shrinking the content, cut off all that extra fat which is not necessary, so that for the 1.5 day before examination we only have the relevant content. So which was the resource that you've used, whether you've used the institute study material only or whether you've taken any other reference books while studying?
Yes. So to be honest, it was not just the institute study material, but it was primarily the institute study material, supplemented also by a couple of other reference books that I had taken. Right. But and that could be any reference books for whoever is comfortable with whatever reference book. So that could be any reference book, but primarily you should be relying on the study material. And I'll tell you, as a matter of fact, it's actually very helpful, trust me. And maybe to decide on what content to study from the study material, you may refer the reference books. But at the end, I think study material should be a primary resource, except for maybe 1 or 2 chapters you might not want to study from the study material. Say, for example, someone wants to is not comfortable studying the essays from the study material, you may refer the essays from another reference book, while the rest of the chapters you may refer from the module itself, that is the study material itself. So in fact, in my case also, study material was the main and the primary source. Another question that a lot many people ask me is whether or not I made self notes for auditing, or whether or not people should make notes for the paper of auditing. See, I would not say that notes are not preferable. In fact, certainly they are, because something that you've written in your own handwriting is easier to grasp and remember, certainly. But, practically speaking, it becomes very difficult to make your own notes for all the chapters, all the answers, given the fact that you have just probably 9 or 15 months to study the 8 big papers, that is, I think, 24 study material modules, that you have 24 books that you're supposed to study within just 9 months across 8 subjects, right? So it becomes very difficult to make your self notes. The approach that I had adopted was to read my study material in such a way that my study material becomes my notes. And that is, again, picking up from where I left, that is converting the 100 pages to 50 pages. That is underlining all the important content, or otherwise canceling the unimportant content, highlighting the keywords, marking few answers as more important than the others, etc., etc. So basically, whatever content you would have otherwise written in your notes, and saying, instead of writing it in your notes, probably just underline it in the book that you would be studying from. That is how I approach the notes thing or the marking thing, and which is something that I strongly suggest you should also be doing.
Okay, perfect. So the next question, which so many students have asked me on YouTube, is kindly upload ABC analysis for CA Inter Auditing. So you're the person who can give me a correct answer on this. So what is your view? Should we follow ABC analysis for a subject like auditing? If yes, to what extent? If you advise that, what are the important chapters?
I think, to give a very unbiased view of this, I will say, so there is no definite answer to this. The thing is, neither am I, nor are you going to set the paper of auditing that will be asked in the student's attempt. So I cannot say which chapter is more important than the other. Right. Giving a broad view of things, right, I would say not just for the paper of auditing, not just CA Inter, CA Final as well, or the entire CA course. The one thing that probably makes CA a little difficult is the content, the quantum of the content, and the unpredictability of anything being asked in the exam, which is actually true. And of late, I have observed this, that institute has also been focusing on those topics which were considered relatively unimportant in the past, and that is what is probably making the papers a little more difficult these days, right? So it's not that institute has raised the bar, it is just probably focusing on those topics which students tend to skip, right? Because of this very reason, I would say, to not risk your chances in the paper of auditing, or for that matter any other subject across CA Inter and Final as well, I will suggest not to skip anything. If you have done 100% of the course, no one will be able to fail you, and mark my words on that. But again, at the same time, it is humanly not possible. And this is very contradictory and ironical, saying as the next statement from what I said before, it is humanly not possible to cover the entire course of audit. So what should you do? At one end, I say it is not possible to cover the entire thing. At another end, I'm going to say don't skip any other chapter, any chapter or anything, right? So the approach that I had adopted and will suggest you the same. Certainly, a few chapters are more important than the others. Say, for example, for me, I felt the chapter of company audit and the chapter of auditing of other entities was something that I felt will be more important than the others. Or rather, let me put it the other way. I felt these are questions that are going to be sure shot asked in the exam. And I was a bit more comfortable with these chapters in terms of me fetching the marks. So for example, essay question, if it is asked, I was not sure of getting 5 out of 5 in the answer, but I was probably sure of getting 5 out of 5 in an answer of company audit that would be asked. So I put a little more focus to the chapters of company audit and auditing of other entities. You may have your own preference, you may have your own list of importance. I think everyone knows out of past trends what chapters are more important than the others. If you go through just 4 or 5 papers, you yourself will be able to make out which chapters are more important than the others. So the point I'm trying to make here is, for those particular chapters, try to give it more emphasis than the others. But that doesn't mean you don't study the other chapters or you skip portions of other chapters. That is not something I will suggest you. You may give relatively more importance to these chapters that you feel are more important, but at the same time, not less important to the not less importance to the other chapters that are probably not as important in your viewpoint. And trust me, this is going to help you like anything. And in terms of me saying that it is not humanly possible to cover the entire course, this is the exact reason I mentioned you make the underlinings or the markings in your study material itself so as to reduce that 100-page content to a 50-page content. And trust me, each and everyone who studies audit, or for that matter, who is a CA student, clears only because of this reason.
Yes, perfect. So even I tell that ABC analysis is not for selective study, it is for prioritizing our revision. So during our first study, we need to cover everything. But during the time of that 1.5 day before examination, we may not be in a position to cover everything. So it is at that particular time, we need to emphasize on the most important chapters. So we can use ABC analysis only for that 1.5 days so that we are prioritizing things, not to study selectively, but to prioritize during the revision time. Yes. So the next question is, paper like auditing is very hard to score. Presentation matters a lot. That too, when Divesh Bhai had written the examination, I think there were no MCQs in May 2018. So getting 87 out of 100, that too without having MCQs, is a really Herculean task. So what was your presentation style? How did you try to benchmark against ICA's answer? How did you try to ensure you're getting maximum marks in auditing?
Good question, very good question, and a very important question as well. I think not just for the paper of auditing, this is a very relevant question for all the subjects. And I would like to give one common answer over here. So one major reason why I emphasized on study material or going through past papers was getting a knack of the ICAI style of writing answers or presenting them. When you have a knack of that, you will be able to write it in the manner which ICAI wants you to. I'm not saying by this, I don't mean that you cannot write answers in your own words. That's not totally what I'm putting out away. But what I'm trying to say is, again, the closer you are to the ICAI thought process, it will be easier to fetch marks. So the closer will your answer sheet be to the suggested copies, suggested answers, I would say, right? So that is something that I would strongly suggest, that do get a good understanding of the way ICAI writes its answers, whether in the suggested answers or in the study material, say test your knowledge part, or say examples or illustrations that are given within the module. Once you go through them clearly, you will get an understanding of the way ICAI is putting it. Say, for example, if it is a question with respect to essays, you quoting the essay number, followed by you quoting the name of the essay, followed by probably a brief on what the essay is about, say lines or a line or two, talking about the case, or if it's a practical case, then talking about the case and explaining it in short, or if it's not, probably explaining the situation or explaining what is asked, and then jumping to the main content followed by the conclusion. And this is very illustrative. This is not supposed to be probably descriptive, but something like this you will be able to make out once you actually go through ICAI's answers very well. And that is something I will strongly suggest. In terms of mere the say presentation, in terms of the beautification on the papers, I will say it is not required. Trust me, in ICA exams, you focusing on having a good handwriting, or probably making those tables, or probably making it fancy, look fancy, is not something that ICA is looking for. ICA is totally looking for the quality of content rather than the beautification, right? So I did not waste all our time into all of that. I will simply say you should have a good, or I would say you should have a clean, legible handwriting, which should be readable, right? And in a paper like audit, or for that matter, a theoretical paper, try marking the keywords. That is certainly something that I would suggest strongly. And maybe, let us say, when it is something like a essay number, or something like a section, if you are quoting it, then try to probably highlight it, which gives more confidence to the paper checker.
Yes. So as I always tell, focus on the presentation, not the handwriting. Focus on the presentation, underline the keywords, every question, try putting it in a new page. After every para, leave a line. So those are the things we can do even without wasting any time. And ICA is not looking at the handwriting. It is looking at the quality of the answers. It is looking at the keywords. So focus on those. So thank you so much, Divesh bhai. One more question is the importance of mock examinations for a paper like auditing. So how was your preparation? So along with the classes, were you giving subject wise mocks? At the end, had you given any separate mock? So what was your preparation through that?
A couple of things. So yes, along with the classes, there used to be probably chapter wise or section wise tests that used to be taken. And yes, there were full course mocks as well. What I did was, so me as a person was never too tensed about my writing speed. I felt I will be able to manage it, which I actually could, factually could. But mocks are important from two viewpoints. One is your writing speed. So I would say from this viewpoint, if you feel, and if you've tested it, that probably you are a very fast writer, then you may not go for writing mocks. But the second and the most important aspect is, again, like I said, the quality of the content. Many a times what happens is you read an answer, you think you'll be able to write it, but when it comes to writing that answer, it becomes very difficult for you. And that is actually true. So try not to experiment that in the main ICA exams. I will strongly suggest that write at least a paper or two of auditing, just to know if you are able to come out with that quality that ICI is seeking. At least you will know what are your weak areas and where do you have to work on. And make sure you do it either in the first or the second reading. The reason is you should be having another reading left so as to improve on your weakness. That is the main reason why I will suggest you to write a mock to get an understanding of the quality of content you're quoting.
Yes, so perfect. So at least for a subject like auditing, that's what I've felt, mock is very essential. And another thing which I've felt is, for a subject like auditing, we never get the confidence to write the full subject mock. So I would suggest, because of that reason, it is better to give chapter wise mocks, because humanly, unless we have the examination, I have never got the confidence to write a full subject mock for auditing. It's really difficult.
I would totally agree with Tabish when he says this. In fact, with CA final, within CA final also, trust me, I have never written a full mock across any subject. The highest I had written a paper was for 2 hours. And what I used to do is basically extrapolate the marks that I would be getting out of the content that I wrote in 2 marks. I would do 3 by 2, something like that. That's something that I would do. But yeah, rightly said, at the end of the day, your intention is not, if you are not bothered about your writing speed, your intention is to test the quality of content, you may certainly test that in the chapter wise test also.
Yeah, even we can keep it for 50 marks, keeping it for 1.5 hours. That way we can test the speed as well. So mock is very important. So another main question is, how do we utilize that 1.5 days before the examination? 1.5 days seems too big, but when it comes to auditing, it feels like it is nothing. So how do we tackle those 1.5 days for auditing?
In fact, let me put it this way. This is the most important question, not just the main, it's the most important question. It's like the last 10 meters of a 100-meter race that you are running. And if you by any chance, probably end up, being a little slow in those last 10 meters, you may lose the race by just probably a millisecond. So it's the last 10 meters that are the most important, right? And similarly, in the case of auditing or CA in general, CA course in general for all the subjects, what is very important is the last 1.5 day and those 3 hours, right? So probably last 1.5 days like the 10 meters, and last the 3 hours of exam is like last 1 meter. So I would say, so like I put it earlier, have a vision in your mind in the first reading itself that whatever you are reading now, if you're taking 10 days, you will have to cover it within 1.5 days. Be very mindful of that fact and study only accordingly. Otherwise, many times it happens that you end up putting a lot of time in the first reading, and it's difficult for you to have that learning curve and probably reduce that timings towards the subsequent readings. So one, you need to be very mindful in the first reading for that. Try summarizing the content in a manner you will be able to grasp in the last 1.5 days. The example for the flowcharts that I gave, the content that was covered in the flowcharts, I didn't cover it separately in the theory, so I cut it, right? So something like this could be done. And what is very important to make sure in the last 1.5 day is to have a plan ready beforehand, right? A plan for the last 1.5 days, preferably an hour-wise plan, or I would say plan for chapter-wise. So you should be knowing I will take so much time to study company audit, I will take so much time to study essays, etc. Right. I will not say that you should be rigid with the plan. So if you plan 2 hours and you take 2 hours 15 minutes, it's not something that you should be hyper about. But if you have a plan, you have a guideline in your mind. Without a plan in mind, you will not be able to probably manage it within 1.5 days, and that I can tell you for sure. So having a plan ready beforehand is something that is very important. And another important point that I wanted to come out at is, so like I mentioned earlier in this video as well, something that you've studied probably 5 months, 5 minutes before also, you might feel like you've probably forgotten it now, which is why I will strongly suggest for all subjects, but specifically for audit, you try and keep about 2 to 3 hours before the exam for revising the content that you've studied in the last 1.5 days. Now, this might to be seem to be too far-fetched or too exaggerated. How can someone spare 2 3 hours even in those 1.5 days? But trust me, it is very important. Now, I know within 2 3 hours covering the entire course of audit is probably not possible. But so what I did was I had sticky notes ready. So what I had done was I had decided, say for example, 20 answers across all the chapters, right? 20 answers in total. I had something like a sticky note stuck to those pages, those 20 pages that were meant for those 20 answers. So I had stuck those 20 sticky notes. In the last 3 hours or 2 hours, what I used to do is take one sticky note, go to that answer, right? Read the answer, then go to the next sticky note. That is something for easy referencing. I'd put those sticky notes, and that way I used to cover those 20 answers at least, which to my best knowledge, I felt had the most likelihood of being asked in the exam, number one, or which I felt I will forget if I don't revise the 3 hours before the exam. That is something that I will suggest you strongly. Try to revise as much as possible in those 3 hours, but at least keep a list. And when I say list, I will say put sticky notes and at least have those 20, 25 or 30 or whatever you plan for yourself, sticky notes ready so that you can do that revision even 3 hours before exam. And trust me, if out of those 20 questions, even if one question is asked in exam, then it will boost your confidence like anything.
So perfect. So firstly, we need to have a plan for that 1.5 days. The plan has to be hour by hour. Along with that, we need to have a bit of flexibility so that if anything goes up or down, we can manage. And secondly, at the end, we need to again have 2 or 3 hours so that whatever we feel is the most important areas. Say, for example, from company auditing section 143 or whatever it is, we need to keep it so that in that final 3 hours, we can revise all those things one more time. That gives us an upper edge over other people so that we've looked at things just 3 hours before the examination. So now there is no way we can forget that in the examination. And if that question comes, so it will be like a different confidence altogether when we enter the examinations. I remember doing it for my CA final theory subjects. So even in these 2 days, I kept the exam day from morning till afternoon to revise it one more time. So that gave me a different sense of confidence while I was entering the exam hall. So that is very important, I would say. So We have covered almost everything, Divesh Bhai, I think. So it was very detailed to give any student a complete picture of how he should approach this gigantic paper of auditing, the preparation strategy, the relevance of mock examination, so revision strategy, how to tackle the 1.5 days, how do we present in the examination. To sum up everything, what would be your advice to the students? So how can we make auditing from boring to scoring? So what do you think are your advice to make audit from boring to scoring?
I think I would like to reiterate and emphasize on something that I started from, that is having a positive mindset towards subjects like auditing and EISSM. Yes, they are difficult, but instead of cribbing about them, be mindful of the fact that if it's difficult for you, it's difficult for everyone. The only option that you're left with is probably managing it at your end. And now, once you have that mindset with you, now is when you strategize, probably like Tabish Bhai rightly calls all of you students, all of us were actually warriors. I mean, me and Tabish Bhai were also warriors when we used to study, and every CA student is a warrior in his own sense. So now you have to strategize to fight the battle named the paper auditing and EISSM or any other paper respectively, right? And when I say the word strategy, it could be different for different people, but the broad things that you need to keep in mind is study keeping the last 1.5 days in your mind, study keeping the quality of content in your mind. Make sure you cover the entire content so that you may not probably skip out a few things and then them being asked in the exams, right? And do highlight keywords, do mark content, do read the study material in a way that you summarize it in the study material itself. And at the end of the day, once you're mentally confident, I think go to the examination hall with full mental confidence, say to yourself you can do it, and I'm sure in fact you all will be able to do.
Thank you so much, Divesh Bhai. This means everything to all our students. So Divesh Bhai also has a separate YouTube channel named Inside Angle, wherein he also shares the preparation strategy for various subjects in CA Inter as well as CA Finals. He has taken different interviews of different rank holders. I would like to say Divesh probably has the biggest network of rank holders. He knows every rank holder from every part of the country, from the north, south, east, and west. He knows every rank holder. So he's taken different interviews of various rank holders, emphasizing on their strategy, their story, their struggle. He's also shared in his journey about the CA course from foundation, inter, final, even the convocation. So do have a look at the channel. So the link is given in the description. Thank you so much, Divesh, for sparing your time, for coming here, for advising all our students as a brother, as a friend, for being so frank and honest, telling out audit was difficult for you as well, but you decided to crack the paper. Thank you so much, students. So shower us some love. Do share this to all your CA friends and tell us in the comment section which is the next topic on which you want the video on. Thank you so much. Have a great day.